Hi, Michael here, and in this video journal I will start the process of closing the box. In part 1 I will be gluing the back to the sides. Part 2 we will work on the top. Keep watching.
Marking where the brace ends meet the sides.
The first thing I want to do is to mark where the brace locations meet the sides. I have center lines marked on the heel block and the tail block and on the back reinforcement stripe. So I'm just going to line those up and just take a pencil and scribe where those braces meet the kerfing.
Tapering the braces down to 2.5 millimeters at their ends.
Okay, now I know where the brace ends are going to meet the sides. I need to make sure that I've got the braces carved down to the thinness that they need to be at that location, which is about 2.5 or 3 millimeters. So I just have some scraps of side cutoffs. These two pieces of rosewood happen to be 3 millimeters. And I'm just going to lay them right against the brace on either side here. Carve that brace down just a little bit to that location.
Final sanding the brace ends.
Okay, now that I've got the brace ends carved down to about 3 millimeters thick at their ends, I need to go ahead and final sand them. So I'm just going to use a little template here, kind of protect the sides while I'm sanding.
Checking the center line.
Okay, I've elevated the backs and sides with some blocks and they're resting on the 15-foot radius dish. What I want to check now is to make sure the center line from the heel block to the tail block is consistent all the way down. And to check that, I'm just going to take this clamp, line it up right here in the middle of my heel block, and then check down here at my tail block and see where my center line is. And then the two lines on either side are the width of the bar of this brace. You can see I'm off just a little bit. But before I mark my brace locations on the sides so that I can cut out the little notches for the braces to fit through, I want that to be square, if you will. So I'm simply going to take this and push it over to where it belongs. And then put a little clamp there. And now my sides are parallel with one another. Allowing for drift, let's call that. Okay, now I can just make sure that my center line's up here at the heel block, and the same thing down here at the tail block. We'll just line that up. Okay, now I can go around the sides and mark the location of the braces on the sides as they come through.
Marking the brace location on the sides.
Okay, now I can mark the precise location of my braces as they come through the sides. All right, now that I've gotten the sides marked for the location of the braces coming through, I can go ahead and take this off. And once I cut the slots in the sides, when I place the back onto the sides with the brace locations cut out, the little slots that I'm fixing to cut will align that body back to where it's supposed to be.
Cutting the sides out for the braces.
I've got the sides resting on the 30-foot radius, top side down, and I've marked the sides where the brace locations come through. And so what I'm going to do now is simply continue those marks all the way across to the other side with the straight edge.
Sawing to the brace end thickness.
Okay, I've got my line scored across the sides where the brace locations are going to cut through, and I've put a little mark here on my saw just to let me know how deep to go. And I'm going to place my straight edge back on here and just saw down to that line on each one of these.
routing out between the cut lines.
Okay, I've got a little Dremel router mounted to a piece of acrylic and a stiffening board of oak that allows me to span the distance of the guitar so that I can accurately route out my little area here.
Fitting the back to the sides.
Okay, well I've gotten the sides routed out for where the brace locations are going to come through and back on the 15-foot radius dish. And I'm just going to go ahead and see how our fit is. And the next thing I need to do is just go ahead and cut my back reinforcement brace so that the blocks will fit flush against the top.
Trimming the back center brace.
Tail block marked where it needs to be. Okay, line that up.
Checking the final fit.
I've gotten the sides cut out for the brace locations and the center stripe down the middle cut out for the blocks. Okay, now I can test the fit of the braces through the sides with my feeler gauge here.
Trimming the back prior to gluing.
Okay, before I can actually glue all this up, I need to go ahead and trim some of this around the outside down just a little bit. So I'm going to take a little red pencil and just lay it up against the sides and mark the back location. That'll give me about 1/4 of an inch. To trim to. There's a red line. Now I'm just going to trim this back to that red line.
I cut to the red line using my scroll saw. Unfortunately, the camera was not recording at the time. Gluing the back to the sides.
Okay, I've gotten the sides ready to glue to the back. Everything has been checked and ready to go. Now I have my back set it on a work table here that I can get all the way around, and I'm going to use spool clamps to clamp the sides to the back. But I'm not actually clamping to the board or the workstation itself, because the back has an arch in it and I don't want to destroy that arch. So I've actually got a piece of mat board that's I've lined with cork all the way around, and it extends beyond the workstation. I'm actually going to be clamping from the corked mat board to the sides to the back, and then put some glue on my sides. I do some of this stuff differently when I'm not trying to film it or record it. I'm not actually using film. And I have my wet sponge ready. Make sure the surface has got enough glue on there. I'm going to carefully line up my heel block first, and then my tail block. And I'm just going to use a little quick clamp here to start things. Okay. Now we start with our spool clamps.
After drying overnight, routing the back flush to the sides.
Okay, I've got the first step of closing the box. I've got the back glued onto my sides. And now it's time to trim down this little bit around the outside that's overhanging so I can start working on closing the box by gluing on the top. And to do that, I'm going to use a little flush trim bit in my router. And I'm going to start by doing climb cuts.
In the typical feed direction of routing, the bit can tear out grain as it approaches it and pulls it up out of the way. This can cause tear out in your wood. A climb cut is different. By a climb cut, you're actually pulling the router backwards down the slope, and it's pushing the grain down into the body rather than pulling it out. So we'll start with climb cuts.
We'll start here and go down to about here, then here to here. So I'm not tearing out grain as I go. Okay, now I've gotten everything flush around the sides. Well, that concludes this video journal on closing the box part 1. Thanks so much for watching.